Hi, Dr. Flight here. We are going to do a segment on product design, and I have here a ukulele which is incredibly beautifully designed, from the manufacture of it to the actual wood that's placed on it. I can't play the ukulele, but one of my daughters plays the ukulele especially well, and I thought I'd bring it in as just an object lesson to look at and listen to. Product design is all about creating an aesthetically pleasing product that functions in a very real way. And this segment talks about different universal design features in that work across lots and lots of different products. And one of the illustrations that we'll look at deals with Apple and Apple products. And if you think about the design of an Apple product, they're designed exceptionally efficiently so that consumers can look at it and use it and be really very intuitive. The product itself is very intuitive in terms of how to use it. This ukulele is pretty intuitive. You strum the strings and you press the notes, and it pretty much works. Now again, you need to have some musical talent, which I have none of, but it's pretty intuitive. In fact, you really don't even need an instruction book to be able to use this. You could probably figure it out on your own, just like you could an Apple product, which is insanely technical if you think about what Apple products do, and any smartphone or any smart device and so forth does nowadays. So enjoy this segment on product design. Okay, design involves the design of the product and also the scheme that will eventually be used to create the product as in the firm. So the design of the production, but then also the design of the product itself. These are parts of the component of the development stage. So as we're still developing the product design is something that we focus on. And it infuses and combines the idea of the technology that's driving the actual product and the human component, or the need that the customer has in fulfilling that's being fulfilled as a result of the product itself. And it throws into the idea, the manufacturability of the product as well. So the design of the product, when we think about this, deals with the consumer level ergonomics and the component that the consumer has when they interact with the product, but making sure that the technology that is using to provide or to satisfy the need that the consumer has actually works and actually functions well. Stepping back a little bit, when we think about product development and we think about developing concepts, new products and new product ideas can be driven by the market. They can be driven by technology, but they can also be driven by design as well. So there's this idea that design in and of itself can be a product generator or a concept generator itself. In fact, design-driven innovations do not come from the market. They create new markets. So you can have a product design, and sometimes we call this product form. The form of the product or the design of the product can be the generator of the product itself. And when a new design form emerges, it helps define a new market. As design expert Roberto Vergante suggests in this quote, they don't create they create new markets. They don't push new technologies necessarily, but they use existing technologies in maybe a new innovative type of a way. In practice, design can mean many different things. As I've mentioned, it can focus on the consumer side of the product, and we talk about ergonomics and how the product fits into the human element. and how the human interacts physically with so a biological human fits in physically with the actual product. Or it can also relate to the actual production line that's being developed as well. Um, it is true that on average, 80% of a product's cost is determined through the design stage. So by the time the product gets through the design stage of development, most of the cost that is achieved in the product has taken place. Okay, so design is clearly an important part on multiple different levels of the product development, for the customer and also the firm as well. So design has been successfully used to differentiate the product in the past. So if we think about branding the product and the product positioning, the design of the product can help us determine what a product is. So for instance, think about Pringles, the Pringles potato chip, and think about the design of their packaging. Packaging design, we know that a Pringles chip comes in a cylinder or a can, and so it's very distinctive. It's not in a bag, it's not a box, it's a cylindrical can, and that sets them apart from their competitors. Now, there have been some competitors that have tried to mimic them or copy them, but the Pringles package is a design feature, and it may be an outcome of the actual design of the chip, because the chip itself is unique in terms of what it looks like. They're all uniform sized little potato chips, basically. And so that's very unique and distinctive, and it creates its own brand identity for that particular product. Sometimes we call this visual identity, where you can look at the product and just visually, by the shape of it, by the design of it, by the look of it, you know what brand it is or what product, what company produced it. So this is one way to think about the role of, or kind of what design is from a firm's perspective in the eyes of the consumer. It should not be an afterthought. It should not be something that is, this is not like the last stage or the last thing to necessarily think about. It's not prettying up the product. That is not what design is about. Design is not the just let's make it look good. It has to function well. And we want to design it with certain elements that achieve certain goals for us. Okay, so as Ken Munch says from Herman Miller, beautiful is not enough. The product has to be useful. Design includes the whole human interface. Absolutely, it does. And so that's why this is a critical point here to think about. Stepping back as an example, think about Apple and how Apple products are designed. Think about the fit, the finish, the look. Apple products are judged very highly on design effectiveness. The way Apple designs their products helps drive Apple sales. They are all consistently modernistic. They're consistently intuitive in terms of how they're designed. And when I talk about design here, I'm not only talking about the physical design of the actual product, I'm also talking about the design of their software as well. The architecture of their software and how all of their service components integrate with their physical hardware components. It's designed extremely well. It's fluid. It's a fluid transition from one product to the next, to the next, to the next, and it's all linked by, again, their software components. But this has been a very conscientious effort that they've made to be consistent in their design efforts. And if you think about how powerful their design is, design defines their product lines and their brand and their culture. So their clean, simple appearance of Apple products actually is traceable to former designers. Dieter Rams, 1960s German designer, has a lot of very, very simple, straightforward designed products. Back again, this is 50 or 60 years ago, but Apple has used the concepts that Rams used in terms of building it into their product design. And clearly, this is not an afterthought for the Apple Corporation. Clearly, design is something they think first, and then maybe they build their products around the design concept, or at least incorporate design very carefully into what they have. Here are some designs by Dieter Rahm. Here's a radio. Originally designed, or the concept of the radio look was designed by Rams. Clean, simple, and you look at these products here and superimpose in your mind Apple products, and you'll see a lot of similarities. Again, some Braun products here, originally using designs by Rams. Clean, simple, straightforward, easy to understand, not confusing types of looks. These are all reminiscent in a typical Apple product, and you can see how that design would influence the brand and the effectiveness of the product. There are other examples in textbooks and such that you can examine where design helps bring a product to market faster. So consistent design will help launch products into the marketplace. And again, this is a bit of a branding product association issue with consumers and consumer behavior. So speed to market and bringing the product to market helps the consumer get there. But also, if you're from a production standpoint, if your product is consistently designed, then your production can stay consistently similar across products. So there's a speed of production that is included, as well as a speed of market acceptance as well. We have ease of manufacture. So again, in manufacturing the product and the design of it makes sense. We think about design differentiation, which would be this notion that products can change, but across their competitors. So from one competitor to the next, the design helps your product be different from your competitor's product, and customers will see that there's differentiation between your product and somebody else's, some other competitors, and they'll see it in the design aspects of your product. When you look at an Apple, the Apple is not a Samsung just by the design of it, or it's not some other competitor's product just by simply the design of it, because it looks like an Apple and not like something else. The design helps meet customer needs. It helps support corporate identity. So again, it helps develop the brand. And also a design feature, which we don't think about often enough. Sometimes we think about design as strictly an aesthetic kind of a looks type of a thing, from an aesthetic look perspective. But design also is an important component of functionality. So the product itself has to function, and the design helps products function better. And one aspect that's becoming more and more important is how well the actual product functions environmentally. So let's say that you have a product and the customer is finished with the product and they want to they want to dispose of the product. Well, how is that product, if it's designed in such a way where the product cannot be broken up into small pieces and disposed of or recycled, then that's a potential environmental issue. So we think about like the disposal of products in the design phase as well, and how products end life or end use will be dealt with from a design perspective. Okay, so there are lots of then contributions of, when we think about how we're going to do design, there are a lot of components here that help the design, that help the firm use the design as a resource, and as a contribution to what it's doing, and eventually lead to better sales and so forth. Okay, so um, there are available to us some general principles that are associated when we think about designing products and designing elements that are going to be created. So as we think about like a guiding principle, these are principles that we can use in the work process, and some of these are measurable, some of them are a little bit more difficult for that, but they're general principles to help guide us through this process. One would be the equitable use principle. When we design a product, we want to make sure that it is usable to a broad spectrum of the market, so that anybody in our target market for sure could use the product. Think about people who have handicaps or who are impaired in some way, people who have difficulty maneuvering and so on and so forth. But we want to make sure, or people who are in different cultures, people who speak foreign languages, we want to make sure that the product could be used by a varied amount of ability people, that it's transferable to lots of folks. So equitable use, flexibility in uses. It may be that we want to use the product for a lot of different reasons. Some of those could be identified now. Some of them might be unforeseeable now, but we want to be able to use a product for multiple purposes. So flexibility in use, could be enhanced by the design of the actual product so that it can be used for lots of different reasons if needed. The design, generally we want designs to be intuitive, so that the customer can pick up the product and without a lot of effort or thought, or without a lot of confusion, understand the product. Sometimes the way we measure this is the length of the user's manual. If the product comes with a user's manual and the user's manual is super long and big, well, that means it's not very simple. It's not very easy or intuitive to use. Again, we'll go back to Apple. Apple, I'm not even sure they have user's manuals. You turn the device on and it walks you through how to use the product and the function of the product itself. It's a fairly intuitive process. All right, perceptible information. So again, this goes into the intuitive use category. Perceptible information is information that is generated from the product, that is determined by the customer. That's not it's not explicitly stated information, but information that is perceived. So from an intuitive sense, the design communicates information to the user that they need to have, but in an unobtrusive type of a format. Okay, so again, these are principles of universal design. So when we're creating something, then we need to think about who's using it, future use of the product and flexibility, how the product is used, how much information is needed to use it, how the customer gets that information, and so forth. Additional principles for universal design include tolerance for error. If I make a mistake, can the product still be used, or can the product adapt, or can it reset? If something is inappropriate, if some inappropriate use is made of the product, will it break, and so on and so forth. Tolerance for error, though, on the consumer end. Low physical effort. So again, how the product interacts ergonomically with the consumer is a big deal here, and how the consumer can best benefit from the product, and then size, space, approach, and use. So will the product satisfy the customer in terms of his space needs? We could actually think about this from an environmental perspective as well. How does it fit? Does it make the most for the amount of space it takes up? Might be another way to think about this from a design perspective. So there are 7 then principles here of universal design. If one follows this checklist of 7 items, they will be designing the product very effectively for the customer, for the user of the product, and will likely be a very successful type of a product. All right, to spend just a second or two wrapping up, we talked about product design during the development stage, what product design is and what the concepts are of it. Remember, it's not prettying up the product. We know that product design incorporates, after the stage, we've incorporated a lot of cost associated with developing the product itself and bringing the product to market. Up to 80% of the product costs are eaten up by this point in time. Contributions of thoughtful design is something that we also considered in terms of contributions to the firm. So design work helps speed up the product to market, helps create differentiation between one company and another, helps meet customer needs, and so on and so forth. So there are lots of reasons why design helps enhance the firm's performance as it's developed further. Also, we talked about these 7 different universal design elements that help create products.